Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. The Call of Duty World Championship is not far away and we believe we know which 7 teams are going to be qualifying. The 8th though is very much still up for grabs. Minnesota Rokkr made a big change just the other day to try and ensure they qualify, but potentially other teams around them should also consider similar ideas. Seattle Surge have stuck with their roster the entire season, but is a roster change necessary if they actually want to win the World Championship, given their trajectory over the last couple of months? And if they do want to make a change, is there only one option left on the table? Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Plenty to dive into. First of all, not sure if Arcitys is cooking anything up here because we know that realistically LAG play, what, 2 more series on the entire season, maybe 3. Maybe they've got 2 more qualifier games or just one, and then they'll probably start in losers at the major and end up top 12. So yeah, not long until there's serious questions about what ARs are going to be in the league next season. I will also mention this here. So we can see aBeZy on the left-hand side, formerly known as Harry, now known as Lucifer. Apparently was a pretty fine name to be fair on the right-hand side. And these are some of the numbers in the Elite Season 4 in Europe that these guys have been putting up. I mean, the AR talent in this region is pretty mega. The entire awoBob's team is ridiculous, to be fair. And I think they will be overlooked a little bit because, you know, they're outside of the US. This is how it tends to go. But aBeZy has been pretty undeniable, it's got to be said, for this entire season. Harry, of course, was on London briefly last season and has also been playing very well indeed. So there's a lot of competition for AR spots in this league already, and it's far from a guarantee what we're going to see next year, especially with many of these teams, I'm sure, making highly significant changes to their lineup. Did also want to mention this. You guys might have heard about the story of Call of Duty SM2. The idea of this project was to effectively try and create what Call of Duty should be, like the ultimate Call of Duty title in a way. My understanding was it was initially based on the Modern Warfare 2, so we're talking like original Modern Warfare 2 game way back in the day, that engine, to base the game off how that was designed and then build it up with all the maps and the perks and the weapons and stuff like that to have like the ultimate Call of Duty game. And I don't believe Activision seemed to mind too much about people tampering around with the really old games. For example, Plutonium on Black Ops 2, they don't really, or even Black Ops 1, they don't really seem to mind too much about that. But I believe the guys working on SM2 decided it was better for their project to move their development over to the Modern Warfare Remastered engine, whatever that's called. So, you know, the game that came out, several years after Modern Warfare 2 originally did. And it seems like Activision doesn't want people to tamper with that engine, and they dropped these guys a cease and desist. And as they say here, we're complying with this order, shutting down all operations. So, really sad to see. Activision know they can't make as good of a Call of Duty game as they used to, so they're shutting down people that try. Maybe there's a world in which if they did go back and try and work on it with the original engine, they would be able to get away with it, and maybe this is just kind of been brought to their attention. But yeah, just unfortunate stuff. So I wish I could say I was surprised about this, but unfortunately I think this is pretty much expected. But I mean, look, if the Plutonium guys can get Black Ops 3 up and running, I'll definitely be straight on that. Let's dive then into how things are looking for the Major 5 qualifiers as it stands. OpTic at 4-0, FaZe at 3-1, the only undefeated team, of course, OpTic Texas so far. They play Florida, I think, to ensure if they win that, they'll go 5-0. If we look down at the bottom though, Surge are currently 1-2. 3-7 map count. They are far from guaranteed to make winners bracket as it stands. If they lose to Vegas, which is possible, it's far from guaranteed which either team wins that. I feel like it's almost a 50-50 series, to be honest. Then Vegas will be in winners, and Surge might well be in losers. It turns out, yeah, Guerrillas only have 1 more match to play, so probably they've got 2 more matches on the entire season. So this, as it stands, is the most likely first-round opponents for the Major. Thought this is pretty cool here from Doug Levy. He gets rid of the teams that have barely any chance of making winners in the first place. So these are the 10 teams that have a decent chance to make winners, such as Thieves, with not even a great chance by the numbers. And if Thieves are to make winners brackets, they will play guaranteed FaZe, Toronto, or OpTic round 1, which is quite something to think about, right? So like, if they do make it, if they do win their final 2 series, they're guaranteed to play one of these teams. Most likely is OpTic, right? Because they should be number 1 seed, and Thieves might well be 8th seed if that was to occur. OpTic, for example, will play a lot of different options, right? There's a lot of things that can happen here, but for the ones that are maybe, Thieves is probably the most interesting one on this list, to be honest, in terms of what's going to happen in the first round. Vegas as well, let's have a look at them. If they make it to winners, their most likely teams again are OpTic, Toronto, or FaZe. They could play Boston or New York, depending on how things go, but again, it's going to be tricky for Vegas, right? Even if they win that series against Surge, they will most likely find themselves with a very difficult first round game. Same story in a way for Minnesota here, right? But they just have a straight up lesser chance of making winners. So I guess that's an advantage fundamentally for Vegas right now. Surge are in a similar boat as well, and definitely wanted to dive into this team in more detail, because with the change we saw the other day with Afro for Attach being moved over on the Minnesota Rokkr side, it does make you wonder whether we might see any further changes. The rosters, I believe, are locked. I don't think that they could go out and sign Afro, for example, not like they might want to do that anyway, but, you know, it could be an idea. Afro for Mack, it's an interesting possibility, but I don't think they even could if they would try to, just because the rosters are locked. What they could do is bring in a player from their sub bench, as Attach was for Afro on the Minnesota Rokkr side, and they do have a player in that position if they wanted to do it. And I will also mention here, I believe there might have been some like small mistake in this analysis here from COD League Stats, so we deleted this one, but I thought it was still interesting enough to mention the idea that when teams go down 0-1 in a series, or even 0-2 in a series, how often do they win compared to how often do they lose? This might be an argument of like how resilient a team is. Fundamentally, a team like FaZe, when they go down 0-1, they win 11 of those series. They've only lost 10 of those series. There's only 2 teams that when they've gone down 0-1, they still win more than they lose. But with FaZe, they're still winning in these series a lot of game 4s and clutching up game 5s. Not necessarily sure it's resilience, but it just shows they're good at search and destroy. But there are certainly some interesting numbers here, like Surge, for example. When they go down 0-1, they've only won 2 series on the entire season, Surge, which is lower than anyone, even lower than London, when going down 1-0 in a series. Now, they don't do that very often because they're good at hardpoint. For example, Minnesota Rokkr, I believe if you add up these numbers, 23, I think that's the most in the entire league instances of going down 1-0. Surge have only gone down 1-0 12 times. Minnesota have gone down 1-0 23 times. So, yeah, not great. But Surge don't really seem to have that much resilience when they do go down in a series. I feel like, you know, even they've got up in a series and lost before, that Minnesota Rokkr series they lost a few weeks ago was pretty tragic indeed. And the numbers have stayed pretty much constant. Surge, Pred is playing pretty much MVP all-star level form. Simp's been pretty good. Accuracy, I think, has stepped it up as well, but their results are just so lackluster. Top 6 at Major 3, top 8 at Major 4. Yes, they made the grand finals way back at Major 1, but what does that really matter looking at the present day? And honestly, I'm surprised Surge haven't pulled the trigger on something so far. It now might be too late for that to happen, but I'll just share this from Temp, who feels very confident they'll make it to champs over the Minnesota Rokkr, especially if they beat Surge in their series, as they will feel confident to do. And then also Axe's thoughts on like, look, it's been way too late now for them to make a change, but they've got to try something.
I'm pretty sure since I started playing here, I'm like a positive record. So I win here more than I lose, so that's great.
Oh yeah, bro.
The internet's good. I mean, today I was the lowest ping in the lobby, respectfully. Like, it wasn't by too much, but hey, it's like, you know, I was like a little,
you'll take
a little slight advantage, a little dope.
Cox Dark Fiber situation.
Dark Fiber, you know what I'm saying? So shout out to FaZe. Shout out to FaZe for letting me play here, and, you know, it's always a good time.
Yes, sir, man. Well, Donnie.
So what is this? I said, Tom, I said, don't let it get too late. I said, they don't have to go and find out that they're not as good as they think they are and get all these, like, mediocre performances in the meantime.
Yeah.
They could have just jumped in and made the roster change. I still think they need a roster change, you know, regardless of this win. But, yeah, I don't know. Ben was always on the side of, no, they're fine. They're good.
No, but I'm off the Seattle train now, bro.
Finally.
Like I'm joining you on this. I just think watching them play, I just don't. Look, they won today. By the way, they finally didn't do the double Mercado ban. Thank God. I've been complaining about that now we've been complaining about it. It's hurt them in a lot of vetoes. They didn't do it today. They let Mercado S&D slide and didn't get picked by either team. But I just don't, watching the Seattle team play, like, yeah, you beat Boston, who are another like top 6, top 8 team. I just feel like the Seattle team against FaZe, OpTic, Thieves, Toronto, like, they're still not just going to be able to cut it, winning 5 maps, whatever. I think that in order for them to actually do something at champs this season, they're going to need to make a roster change.
Yeah, my chat said it was 5-3. Yeah.
If we beat Seattle, our chances of making champs are probably like
way higher.
80%, bro. Like, nobody that high.
Well, no, then it just comes down to the major.
Yeah, then it comes down to the major.
Yep.
We have like multiple chances.
Yep. And starting in winners, bro. Nah, dude, starting in winners is hacking, Don. I've realized. Like, obviously, I've only been to 2 majors, but bro, nah, it's actually hacking.
Started in winners last time, my first time in 3 years, and we just
So these are their numbers on the season, and their hardpoint has been incredibly good, Serge. 37 wins, 25 losses in hardpoint. Like, that's one of the best records in the league. Their search and destroy there was let them down. Yes, they went on that ridiculous 12 losing streak or whatever it was, which has destroyed their records, but you can't exactly just exclude that. And their search and destroy hasn't got massively better, to be honest. It's better than it used to be, absolutely. Largely led by Pred with a 1.3 in search on the season, and the highest first bloods in the league outside of aBeZy, I believe. But outside of that, it's not been great. Accuracy's got a 0.8 in search on the season. Mack's got a 0.77 in search. Simp with a 0.93. That is really where a lot of their weaknesses lie. Their hardpoint, their control is respectable. Their search and destroy is still not particularly good. And another stat that I noticed as well, look at this first blood percentage here from Mack. He's got 41 first bloods and 74 first deaths. That's one of the worst first blood to first death ratios that I've actually seen in the league. So, it's difficult for Mack, right? He just hasn't been good in search and destroy this year. And if there's one player that people would say is the most likely to be replaced if there was to be a replacement, Mack is probably the most likely candidate. And their search and destroy is bad, and that's probably his worst game mode. So, I don't think they will make this change. The entire season they have spent just sitting back and relaxing. Sam Phoenix comes out after every event and says, I'm happy with our improvements, but we won like 2 maps this tournament or something like that. And I can understand his point of view. He likes his team. They've obviously achieved a lot last year. They won in Toronto, to be fair. Major 3, I believe, last season they won. And, I can understand why they stuck together this roster. I can understand why they still felt like success was going to happen. But when it's been like a year after your first victory last season and nothing has really changed, and the team is, if anything, regressing, then I think it's probably time to blow it up. And Minnesota Rokkr have done this, Boston have done this, teams are, even Vegas have done this, right? Teams around Surge in the standings. Surge are only 6th in the standings. They're only 30, 40 points above Vegas right now. It's not been good for them, despite the fact that they have Preds playing at, prime form, and they're not going to have that next season. He's going to go away. So what is the future of Seattle Surge? I don't know. If they want to win, this is the frustrating thing I see with, I'm happy Minnesota made this change. I'm not, convinced about the Afro for attach thing, but I like that they tried it because that team was not going to win champs as it stood. No way, in my opinion. Boston, they've made moves to try and get better, to try and at least give them some outside dark horse potential come the World Championship. Because right now, it's OpTic, it's Thieves, it's FaZe, it's Toronto. Those are the 4 favourites, and it's tough to know who's going to win of those 4, but one of those 4 probably will win. If you're a team that's going to make champs but isn't one of those 4, surely try something. So this is where it comes down to Gwyn, who I believe has been on the SMG or certainly can potentially play that role in the Challenger side. He is their substitute for the Seattle Surge team. I believe he's meant to be known as, I'm not too familiar with this player, but I believe he's known as being pretty good in search and destroy. So, this is a question, right? If you're going to make a change with Surge, this is the only change that is viable now. You've left it late to such an extent that there is no other move. You can not bring in any player from another organization. There is no time. The rosters are locked and no one's going to probably do a deal with you anyway, even if it was to be the case. They probably, as it stands, play Toronto first round at champs. They got 3-0 smoked by Toronto just the other day online. So that's not ideal. I think there's an argument to say, look, you've seen what Minnesota Rokkr have done. Your team is struggling. Yes, they won that series against Boston last weekend. Yes, they play Vegas coming up, and it's certainly winnable for them, and they could well make winners. But even if they do they have enough with this roster to win champs or to go far in champs, to get top 3 at champs? There's always the potential. This team has so much talent on it, stacked with Pred and Sib, and Accuracy, as I say, has been playing better, and Mack on his day is a very impactful player. They've got what it takes, and maybe that's what the coach feels, that they've got what it takes and therefore just stick with it. But they've just been regressing. Their search and destroy hasn't been good. The roster has probably just run its course, and next year they're not going to have Pred. He's going to go somewhere else. They're probably not going to have Sib either. So it's this is your chance, surely, when you've got players like Pred and Sib on your team and they're not leaving yet, to actually do something, and yet they really have underperformed, I think. So definitely intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Would you decide to pull the trigger on this and say, you know what, for the last couple of games of these qualifiers, put Gwyn in, see what happens, and look, do the major as it stands, and then obviously make the World Championship anyway? Or do they feel so concerned that they won't even make champs fully, even though they should be pretty much guaranteed now, that they're thinking, you know what, let's just stick with our team to make sure we get to champs, and then just hope that we can perform well there? So definitely intrigued to your thoughts on all this in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.